Hello, today is Wednesday, September 16th, and it was good to see you all. I'm so glad that we got some fresh air finally. I hope you went outside and took a big breath of fresh air. And let's enjoy it while it lasts because I think the smoke is going to come back over the weekend. So enjoy that, spend some time outside, and be thankful that we can breathe in some fresh air finally. So today we started off with a learning check. It was all about the different types of species you read about in the textbook. So keystone, invasive, non-native versus native species, indicator species, foundation species, that sort of thing. So all of those, we did a learning check at the very beginning. And then the rest of the time was spent talking about these different species. And I had you all write in your own words what each of those kind of meant. And we talked about that in class. And then we spent the rest of the time in breakout groups doing a Google Slides kind of game to show that you've learned kind of those types of things. So let's go over really quickly some key info about the different types of species. So we talked about foundation species. So foundation species actually change the ecosystem and create habitats for other organisms, aka they lay the foundation, like physical foundation for ecosystems. Animals like beavers, for example, would be considered foundation species because they change the landscape. Versus a keystone species is super important. They also have to deal with a lot of effects of the ecosystem, but they are the thing that kind of holds an ecosystem together. Without this keystone species, the rest of the ecosystem would fall apart because it is so integral to whatever is happening there. So for example, sea otters is one that we talked about being really important for keeping the sea urchin population at bay, which then influence the kelp population and then everything that relies on kelp and stuff like that. So think of keystone species as like that last piece of wooden block when you're playing Jenga right before it falls. And if you take that one piece out, everything comes crumbling down. That's the idea with keystone species, and they're super important. Then we talked about indicator versus invasive species. So invasive species, which you'll also hear as non-native species, which is contrasted with native species. Right? So native species is a species that is from that particular place or ecosystem. It is from there, belongs there, versus invasive species maybe have migrated or have hitchhiked or traveled in some way from their original area to other areas. And we talked about how invasive species are oftentimes are selected species. They grow really rapidly, they have high reproduction rates, they're able to survive in different environments, and they end up outcompeting kind of the original things that are there. Right? And then indicator species, we talked about how all species are going to be affected by changes in the environment, right? We think about ranges of tolerance, but indicator species feel the effects maybe sooner for particular traits. So we talked about frogs and amphibians, for example, because they have a semi-permeable skin, because of other traits that they have, they'll feel effects faster. So scientists look toward those species to let us know and warn us when something is wrong in the ecosystem. Maybe pHs have changed, or maybe there have been chemicals that were put into the water, or maybe the temperature is changing, right? So we look to these species to help us kind of indicate, to warn us that things have been changing. All right, cool. So after we kind of verbally talked about that and tried to put those things in our own words, we did this Google Slides template. So here it is. I put you all in breakout rooms, and then you clicked on your specific breakout room. And what yours looks like is kind of a template. So it's got missing information, you're supposed to put in pictures, but basically you're trying to create games for these three types of species and then an info sheet. So here you would input what is a keystone species, and then you would insert a picture and the name here, and then you would correct answer, incorrect answer, that sort of thing. So by the end of this, and after you've filled out all of these, you should have kind of a working Google slide that is kind of like a game version of this. So let me pause for a second and let me show you kind of an example of that. This is the example that I showed in class of what your finished product might look like. So if I go to present mode, and we can kind of see how this clicks through, all of these are kind of linked together. So we've got this, you can click, let's look at the keystone species game, and you'll have included what a keystone species is here. You can click play, and then you might say click on the keystone species, and if you click on this, it'll take you to the wrong answer and it'll explain why that is not the case. And if you go back and you click on the correct answer, which is sea otters, it'll explain kind of why that's the case, right? And then the invasive species game may look something like this. You are going to try to click on the place where they're originally from. So if we're taking a look at zebra mussels, and maybe, sorry for the loud noises, y'all. Maybe if I think they're from South America. Nope. I'll try again. Maybe from Europe. Cool. This is actually from Europe and Asia, so if you clicked either, it would have been correct. And then there's some information about it, right? So that's what the invasive species one looks like, and then the indicator species looks like this. You're going to pick the characteristic that is like what makes it an indicator species. So the first example was frogs. Here are the 3 characteristics that I can choose from. They all live in all types of ecosystems. They have semi-permeable skin, and they are large and migrate often. So maybe I'll click they have semi-permeable skin, and that was the correct answer. And then it explains to me what that is. And then finally here you have your info sheet. So if you click on it, you'll just have some basic information about what that type of species is. So this is kind of the final product, and you were put in like groups of 3-ish, and you could separate this up. So maybe one person did the keystone species game, one person did the invasive species game, and so on. And we're planning on using this for our like reviews and stuff later on when we go through this. Cool. So one last thing that I wanted to show you that's a little tricky with this is you'll have to link different slides in order to get the like clickable parts to work when you actually play the game, right? So here are on the first slide, I gave you some resources. So you can click on these videos to take a look, or you can kind of listen on here. So what I like to do when I link things is I will delete this real quick. You can either just click on the picture and then press this little link button here, or press Control K, or you can right click and then go to link. But the idea is that you want to link this to the slide that will show the correct answer or the incorrect answer, right? So the sea otter is the correct answer. So I want to link it to this next slide here. So I'm going to find slide 6, which is my next slide on there, and then press apply. So now it's linked. So now basically if I go here to present, and if I click on it, it'll go to that slide, right? The other way that you can do this is, if you go back here, let's say you want to link a bigger area so that they can click on the words or this. What you can do is draw a text box or a shape. So I'll make a rectangle shape here, and I'm going to cover the area that I want to be clickable. So this whole area I want to be clickable. As you notice, now the text box is kind of covering everything, so I need to go back and I need to make it transparent, both the border and the fill. So now this is what it looks like. You can't tell that there's a text box there, but it is. So now I can click on this and then do the same thing. So I can link it to the slide that I want it to go to, which happens to be slide 6, and press apply, and then boom, there it is. Right, so you'll do the same thing with anything that you need to link. So even with the map, for example, you'll see that this links to oops because that's not correct, but this one links to yes, it's correct. So make sure you change the links in there. Otherwise, everything else should be kind of ready to go in this template for you. All right, cool. When you are done with this, you can upload it to Google Classroom, and then in the comments section, like I asked, please tell me how you divided up the work in your group and who did what. Just a little bit of accountability there, and then I will be able to take these all and we can play the games kind of later on. So let me know if you have any questions, stop by office hours or message me on Remind. But otherwise, good luck and enjoy the fresh air for the days that we have it.